certain jobs that we find attractive, some ideas that we may find attractive, all of those different things. You might don't, you good? All of those different things stem from what we find attractive. And so this is why it's very important to understand attraction as a concept. Because if we don't understand the concept of attraction from a fundamental level, we're not going to understand why we do the things that we do. We're not going to understand why we've put ourselves into situations we may not find so comfortable. And why if we understand attraction, the principle, the laws of attraction properly, we'll be able to put ourselves reliably into situations that we are comfortable in, that we are attracted to, that we're happy to be in. Even if they're not necessarily pleasurable, we're still happy to be there. Does this make sense? Like the importance of understanding why, like we should understand attraction as a concept. Yes? And so if you start like nailing down things that we're attracted to, right? Just like start listing them out and start like boiling down those concepts, you'll find that there are 6 things that we're attracted to. These are 6 things that we can be attracted to. And these things are also listed out in the Vedic texts, in the Vedic literature. This is the Vedic tradition of Bhakti, specifically will highlight these 6 things. The first thing is beauty. That is maybe the most easily accessible and understood form of attraction that we find in this world. Like if we see, this is New York, we're in Fashion Central, right? Like people dress nicely on the street. You walk down the street, you see beauty, right? I was actually thinking about like perfume ads. You know, you ever consider like the concept of a perfume ad? Like you walk down Houston from what is it, like Broadway Lafayette? That's where I get off. When I walk down Houston, there's always like a perfume ad on like one of the bus billboards, you know, on the bus stands. And it's so interesting to me because you can't actually like experience perfume through like a visual ad. Does this make sense? Like, am I crazy? Like, how do you sell perfume, right? But the way people sell perfume is that it's like it's like Johnny Depp or it's like Margot Robbie. It's some really beautiful celebrity just like posing with a bottle of this perfume, and that's the beauty of this person makes us want to buy the perfume, right? Which doesn't really make sense because no matter how hard I try, I can't look like Margot Robbie, right? So there's no reason I should buy this. But we're attracted to it. We're attracted to this beauty that we see in day-to-day life, right? And so many things boil down to beauty. So many things also boil down to like just money, just wealth, right? So we look at people who have lots of money. We see like people who have like really nice jobs. These jobs are really attractive. Why? Because they pay lots and lots of money, yeah? And so wealth is another thing that we're attracted to. And we should also be honest about that we are attracted to wealth, which I find is something that we may not be so honest with ourselves when we're attracted to wealth. Another thing that we may not be so honest with ourselves with is being attracted to power. We often say like, oh, the people who aspire to power are the ones who don't deserve it, and the people who deserve power are the ones who don't aspire to it. That may be true. But also, if we're really honest with ourselves, we do like being in control. There's a feeling of helplessness that we dislike intensely. It is a very uncomfortable position to be in when we find ourselves like completely lacking control. And so I think a really great example of this is if you've ever been into an elevator and none of the buttons are working, can you imagine how terrified you are? Like the doors close, you're just in this elevator and like you have no control over where this elevator goes. How many of you guys would be okay with an elevator with no buttons? Only Manohar, he's a saint. So that's the idea, right? Like we want to be in control. We have this desire, we're attracted to power in gross or subtle ways. Another thing we're attracted to is fame, right? How many of us want to become influencers on Instagram? Please raise your hand. I mean, that's the thing, right? Influencer on Instagram. You should all go follow him, by the way. He's amazing. But this idea of fame, it is attractive, to have, crowds of people chanting your name. That's a powerful feeling. It's a powerful feeling to be a rock star up on a stage. And there's a lot of like, for lack of a better word, fizz we get from that. It's very attractive. Yeah? If you look at like the Beatles, if you just like consider like the Beatles, they sang nicely, which is true, but they were very famous. And it is a very seductive idea. It's very attractive to be like, oh yeah, there's lots of people that are like, like cheering their names or like fans of theirs. So fame is also something that we're really attracted to. Knowledge is another one, right? We see people who are really intelligent and it's like, wow, that's so interesting. I want to hear from you. I just want to listen to you talk, And so that's another thing that we can be attracted to if we're really honest with ourselves, that knowledge. That if people who just know things, it's charismatic as hell, right? And people just know or have the ability to just know random factoids or can even be able to see things see like the hidden layers behind something. It's very attractive when people have lots of knowledge. And the last thing that people will highlight is renunciation. Renunciation, before we get into that graphic there, is the ability to not really care, to be perfectly self-satisfied no matter what happens. Yes? You ever meet that person who's like too cool for school? Right? Like they're just like, yeah, like whatever. And there's a certain level of like, wow, that guy's so cool. Like, cause he just doesn't care about like whatever's going on, There's something that's attractive about that. And so these are the 6 qualities. They're listed as like opulences or types of abundance, the things that we're attracted to. Yes? They're, attractive energies. And so really what we do a lot of now in like modern society, we do like, vision boards, manifestation, like full moon circles, like all sorts of things that we'll do to try and manifest and bring these things that we're attracted to into our lives, right? I have no idea who this is. I searched up vision board on Google Images and this YouTube thumbnail came out. And so, but yeah, this is the slogan, right? Create your dream life. You just have to plan it, Make a vision board and everything will work out, right? This is the technique that we really find espoused so often. And the thing is, people who do it consistently, some people find that it works very well for them. Other people find that it doesn't. And so why is this? Like, what is the differentiating factor between manifestation, vision boards, prayer, full moon circles, whatever it is that we try to do to attract these things that we're attracted to into our lives? Why does it work sometimes? And why does it work? Why does it not work other times? Is this a question that anyone else has had, or is it just me? You're getting some nods. So like, yes, ideally, yes. And so the thing that comes to mind here is we have to, in order to understand the principle of attraction, there's a way that we can understand it by looking at the practical side of things. So this is one of my favorite. I don't know if you can necessarily call it like a sutra. A sutra, for those of you who don't know, is Sanskrit for, I think, needle. Needle, yes. The idea is it's a thread. There we go. It's a thread because that thread, as you may know, contains everything. It's a succinct representation of a broader principle. And so this sutra, that the principle informs the practical, and that the practical reveals the principle. This is a really useful meditation for me because we can find principles in any practice. People get really good at golf. People become really successful scientists. Champak is a potter. She makes pottery. And the principles of making good pottery lead themselves to success in any other discipline. Being patient, knowing that fire transforms things, like that, it's a restorative process, that even the waste can be reused. These are principles that from pottery that, let me just adjust the mic here. Here? All right. I can't figure out how to work this. Give me a second. So yes, these principles that exist in any discipline, in any practice, are the same. And the reason this is true, the reason this is true is because all truth, all existence rests on a singular level, right? Any spiritual conception of God, any spiritual conception of divinity goes back to the idea that divinity is the essence on which existence rests upon. That God is the creator of all things. This is the understanding, right? So all truth, all existence is what we call in the Vedic tradition sat. It is real, it is eternal. And so this is one of the qualities of spiritual energy. It's the Samvit Shakti, yes? And so this sat, what is real, if we can dial down to finding what is real, even within the different layers of unreality that are built upon it, we can understand the principle at play. And when we understand this principle at play, we will understand not only how to do this one thing well, but we will understand how to do everything well. Does this make sense? How important understanding the principle of everything is. And so because the other part of this, which is really cool, is that if we understand the principle behind everything, we understand that everything rests upon divinity, on the Lord, that existence is based upon the Lord's energy, that the Lord pervades everything. We can then see everything as an emanation of the Lord. And everything will then lead us to spiritual life. Every single thing that we do in this world can and will lead us to spiritual life if we have that vision. If we have that vision to see divinity's hand and role in everything that we process, in everything that we do. This is a really powerful understanding because what this does is it allows us to look at anything and uncover the secrets of the universe and see how does this help me in my not only material endeavors but also my spiritual endeavors. And so this of course has to be informed by scriptural works, teachers, teachings, and friends is the often these are guru, sadhu, shastra. These are the things that we refer to make sure that we're not going down the wrong train of thought, because that's a very dangerous thing to do. There's actually a story of a scientist who was examining the necessity of the legs of a spider. And so spiders have 8 legs. And so the scientist, a very cruel scientist by the way, cuts off, the spider walks with 8 legs, it's fine. The scientist cuts off 2 legs and the spider can still walk. Because the scientist says, "Oh, spider, please walk." So the spider walks. He cuts off 2 more legs, and the spider can still walk because he tells the spider to walk. And then he cuts off 2 more legs, and the spider is unable to walk. And says, "Okay, clearly, legs are used for hearing because I've told the spider to walk, and now it can't walk." Right? It's a logical assumption, right? I've told the spider to walk. I've removed a leg. Therefore, the only thing that was different between when the spider could walk and when the spider couldn't walk was the number of legs the spider had. And so clearly, it responded to my instructions then, it heard me then, and it couldn't hear me now. So this is the level of inference. It's really an example of poor inference that we find in the Vedic tradition. And so, yes, one of the things that we can look for then is in the natural world, how do we see it? How do we perceive attraction? Where do we find attraction in the natural world, in the world around us? Any guesses where I'm going with this? Don't be shy. What comes to mind when you think of something that's attractive, that has the ability to attract things? Gravity is a good one. That's close.
What was it?
What do you think of in the world? Gravity.
Gravity.
Gravity attracts things, yes? What do you think of in the world that has an ability to attract? Magnets, yes, exactly. That's exactly where I'm going with this. So actually, if you think about it, really just think about it, right? If we understand magnets, they attract things because of a few different reasons. One is they have a certain inner composition, right? Like magnets are made out of metal. You will never find a magnet that is entirely made out of wood because wood is not magnetic. It's only metal, and I think it's like only iron. I might be wrong on that. Yeah, what's that?
Ferromagnet.
Yeah, yes. Ferromagnets. I don't know what that is, but it sounds about right. So yeah, magnets, they're made out of metal, right? So there's an inner composition that's required. There's an inner makeup that's required to be magnetic, yes? Another really important point in just understanding the inner makeup of a magnet is that apparently what differentiates a chunk of raw metal, of a raw iron, for example, from a magnet is that all the atoms, this is apparently true, all the atoms in magnetic iron are pointing the same way. And because they're pointing the same way, they create like a magnetic field. Whereas in a normal like hunk of metal, they're just pointing every which way. And so this is another key point, that there's like an inner orientation here. So this inner composition, what we're composed of on the inside is what brings out that innate magnetic ability, yes? In addition to that, external orientation. So like north, like you ever see those magnets when you can't push them together because they're like the different sides of the magnet, or they're the same side of the magnet, sorry. So like that's the second picture just there. Like north and north, they don't match. North and south, that's the only way that it works. So you need to be in the right orientation. You need to be able to receive, right? You need to actually be able to like be ready to receive whatever it is that we find, yes? And then the third thing is relative distance. I can have a magnet over here and a magnet over there, and if they're like tiny magnets, they're not gonna, attract each other. But if you have two magnets right next to each other, they're gonna attract, right? So relative distance, this is also an important thing. And so, yes?
Is it the same with like humans and animals? Like if we're close to each other, we'll attract?
I don't think that works, because I think with magnets specifically, they're like metal and we're not metal.
To attract, it's just the force is very low. In that case, gravity.
That might, yeah, gravity.
Mass to attract.
Gravity, sure. I'm not real. Welcome, guys, to my 6th grade science presentation. So yeah, I mean, sure, I'm sure that works. But I mean, even to your question, right? If we want to attract something like, let's say, very material, right? We want to attract like a good job, for example, right? We all want a nice job. We need to start with ourselves, right? We need a certain quality. We need qualifications. I can't apply to be an accountant if I don't know how to use Excel, right? There needs to be something on the inside that I need to develop, right? This is the first step. This is our inner composition, what we have inside, right? The external orientation, we need to be ready to receive. We need to be like looking to receive these things. And so we need to be available and applying to jobs, right? This is the other thing. And then the last part of it is relative distance. So at some point, I can apply and apply and apply, but it's only when I become close to someone else who actually has that ability to reciprocate, the employer, or perhaps like your network of friends who can, go ahead and like recommend you for a refer you to another job as an accountant, that you can then go ahead and get that job, right? So this is the third element, proximity, like distance. Does this make sense? Do magnets make sense now? Thank you for coming to my 6th grade science presentation. And so the real key here, the real like differentiating factor here, is that if we look at this is a practical example, right? Going back to what I spoke about before, with the practical being informed, the practical revealing the principle. What is the principle here? The principle here is that alignment is attractive. Yes, all the atoms in a magnet point in the same way. The more aligned that they are, the more they point in the same direction, the more powerful that magnet is. And so the question we can ask ourselves when it comes to, am I attracting the things that I want, is how aligned am I to those things? This phrase, This is the law of attraction right here. Because this phrase will tell you everything you need to know about how to act in this world in order to become attractive to the things that you want to attract. So let's start with something kind of basic, right? A basic example. I talked about finding a nice job, yeah? Oftentimes people can end up in a job that doesn't really like meet or like suit them, you know? You see people who are like, just like, they're just born to be like musicians or something, or musicians, born to do, you can tell they're just meant to do something different in their life than what they're doing right now. Why is that so clearly just like, you can sense that there's some discomfort there. It's not necessarily, they don't attract you in that way. But then you see them perform on stage and you're like, oh my God, like, where did that come from? You know, it's like the tropes of like the shy musician. You hear about, you know, this? Like, they're like in normal like day-to-day life, they're just like kind of like, it's like, you know, like really like, they're not like a star, they don't like radiate charisma, and then they get on stage and they like blow everyone's like mind, right? Why is that? Why is that? So the reason why is because according to the Gita, and also from our own practical experience, we can understand that we all have a particular swadharma. We all have a particular nature. And this nature is individual to ourselves. It can look in broad strokes similar to other people, but it is a very personal, very specific, and very individual understanding of who we are, of what we like to do, what we can do very well in this world. Yes? And so when we understand our swadharma, when we understand what our teachers will often translate as our occupational duty, not just our jobs, but like what we contribute to the world as an offering, right? What is our vocation, not just a career? Yeah, what is our offering to this world? When we understand that and we act on that level, when we act on the level of our swadharma, on our nature, it's so attractive, right? That's how we get people who are able to sing real, it's just, wow, they sing so well. Wow, they paint so well. Oh, actually, like, yeah, being like a manager really suits them, you know? Somehow, like, this person's in love with accounting and they just love being a freaking accountant. Couldn't be me, right? And so, like, there's people, we see that. We see what it is for ourselves. And when we act aligned with that, when we have that internal alignment, that I, myself, am internally aligned with what I do, and then also externally, I act in alignment with that internal alignment. Does that make sense? I'm externally matching what's on the inside. That matching between, that alignment between the internal and the external, it's attractive, right? This internal alignment attracts the external alignment, and the external alignment and the internal alignment combined attract the third thing, which is like positional, like, you know, proximity, like the alignment within the universe at large, if you will. Does this make sense? In understanding how our swadharma, our ability to act alongside or act in alignment with our nature, makes it easy for us to attract what we want in our lives. Because that's the thing. Attracting what we want in our lives is predicated on what we want in our lives. Yes? And what we want in our life is what matches our nature, what matches our swadharma. It's what we want to do naturally without anyone forcing it upon us. If you look at, there's all these like people out there that always talk about like, find your purpose and like how to become the best version of you and all these sort of things. I'm sure they all have very valuable contributions to the world. And I'm not going to diss any of them. However, I will say that the most reliable way to understand what it is your purpose is just to go back and look at what you've done historically without anyone telling you to do it. Krishna actually says this in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, for those of you who don't know, is this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And Arjuna is really, he's born to be a leader of men. He's born to be a warrior. He's born to like fight battles for the good of mankind. And so he's facing this battle that's like really like he doesn't want to do it because it's a really difficult thing to do, to fight people that he was related to, for like the sake of like the benefit of the world, obviously. And so he's like, no, I don't want to do this, Krishna. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to do this. And Krishna just makes this point that you're going to end up doing it anyway. You're going to end up following your nature anyway. You're going to follow your swadharma anyway. And so this idea of our swadharma, this is very critical to understanding what's attractive about us, what we want to do. The other part of it is that there's actually layers to our identity. Yes? The Bhakti conception, the Vedic conception, is that we also, at our core, we're a soul. We're a soul. We are a spiritual entity having a material experience. And so we can act on the level of our material swadharma, what we're born with, our psychophysical nature in this lifetime. But also, if we act on the level of the soul, whatever we act with, whatever we do on the level of the soul, that by nature is already attractive because we're aligned with that. So when we're in alignment with the nature of the soul, and we act on that level, if we continue this process, the same principle applies. The internal alignment leads to external alignment, leads to positional alignment. Does this make sense? The principle is the same. The practical reveals the principle, and the principle informs the practical. Yes? And so now, I kind of want to share like an easy 3-step process, because nothing would be complete without an easy 3-step process. I call this the arc of attraction. It's a really simple thing. We basically just go through this own exercise, just using the example of magnets, right? The first step to manifesting anything, and by the way, just before I really get into this, I've seen like secular writers, this isn't just a spiritual thing. I've seen secular writers talk about this. I've seen like religious studies PhD like people talk about this. It's a principle. That's the whole point, is that principles are on the level of existence, yes? And so these principles allow for us to understand how to do this reliably in every scenario, yes? So the first step in attracting anything is to be exceedingly clear about what you want, right? This is our own internal alignment. We have to be really, really clear about what it is that we want. And we also have to understand what level of our identity that desire is coming from, that what we want is coming from. Oftentimes, we want things that we don't actually want. We think we want them because we've been societally conditioned to want them. We see all of our friends doing the things, and we're like, oh, I want to do that too. Wanting so many things that come to mind, right? So like, there's so many things that we see. It's like, okay, like they're not necessarily coming from us. They're just like impositions on us. So we have to kind of like go through the work of sorting these different desires out. This is the introspective work that we do, yes? And so when we understand the level, is this something that's like a fleeting desire? Is this something that's a more deep-rooted, like part of my swadharma, part of my innate nature desire? Or is this a desire that's coming from my soul, this desire for connection with divinity, really? And so what level of desire is this? What level of identity is this desire operating on? And we need to be exceedingly clear about that. And that takes real introspective work, yes? A lot of people don't even get to step 1, even fewer get through step 1, right? Most people spend a lot of time getting stuck on step 2, which is to make yourself ready to receive the thing. There's actually a lot of like data to support this idea, because how many of you know how many people who win lotteries? Like if you win a lottery, do you guys know what the chances are that you're gonna like stay rich for the rest of your life are? I'm not talking like a lottery for like $100. I'm talking like mega millions. Does anyone know?
Low.
Most people who win the lottery end up broke within like a year or two. And it's like mega millions lottery. Is because they're not actually internally equipped to handle that level of money, right? Because imagine if you've been broke your entire life and you win $1 million, the first thing you do is you're just gonna splurge, right? There's no sense of like, I'm gonna save for a rainy day. Like, it's just not something that like they are habituated to doing. There's a lot of internal transformation that has to happen first in order for us to receive the external things. Yes? And so this inner change that we build up, that we have to like manifest internally, it happens over time. And so this is where a lot of people get stuck because they're not really contemplating, they're not actively working on making those inner changes that lead to the external changes. All we're focused on, for the most part, is what we look like externally. What's my life look like on an external level? I have a nice house, right? I make money online. I run my own business. I have a beautiful partner. Whatever it is that we're looking for, whatever it is that we're looking to attract, we're only really focused on the externals. We rarely ask ourselves, what is that internal shift that I need to do in order to understand, in order to be able to handle that external thing in my life, being in my life. Does this make sense? The importance of step 2. This is really where people get stuck. And then the third thing, is really, the first 2 is the achiever mindset. It's, this is what I can do, and it's like everything that you're doing. But ultimately, it takes 2 to tango. It takes the universe to also reciprocate. And so we need to patiently allow things to move into our life on their own accord. We need to set ourselves up so that we can receive it when it comes, but we can't allow ourselves to just like, we can't just force it, And so actually, I travel a lot. I split my time between New York and London. I actually landed at JFK this morning. I was thinking about this at baggage claim. You guys ever you ever been to baggage claim and you're just like ready to get the hell out of the airport? You're just like, it's a long flight. You're like tired. You're just like, I need to like go home. And you're just looking for your bag, and every single bag that rolls down the conveyor belt, every single bag just isn't yours. And then you see one that looks like your suitcase, but it's not, right? And so when you see this, it's like, what does this make you think? Well, actually, it's allowing things to happen on their own accord, because I could just easily just grab a suit. If I just wanted a suitcase, like an externally, I just wanted a suitcase, I could just grab a suitcase off the rack. It wouldn't have to be mine, right? I would just grab a suitcase and just walk off. And I have a suitcase, I can go home, right? But that's not how it works. I have to wait for my suitcase, right? And even if it looks like my suitcase, I still need to double check, is this actually my suitcase? Just because someone else has the same color luggage doesn't mean that it's actually mine, right? So we need to really be patient and allow like the force of time to just bring these things into our lives the same way that we allow baggage claim to eventually bring us our suitcase, right? And so what that also means is that when these things do come, we have to say yes to it. When my suitcase rolls off the baggage claim, I need to be able to be like willing to pick it up. I can't forever be in a state of like, oh, I'm not ready to move on. I'm not ready to like, go home yet. Like, we can't be stuck in limbo forever. When these things come, we have to say yes to it. And that requires real humility, because oftentimes the things that we aspire to are really high things. If we talk about like a loving partner, today's Valentine's Day, how many people like in this world like struggle because like they're in like terrible relationships, or like they're like not even in a relationship, And so when we look for these things, it's actually such a great thing. It's an amazing thing to be in a loving relationship with another human being. And when we find it, we have to say yes to it, right? We have to say yes, and that requires the deep humility that we develop as part of step 1 and step 2, right? Because it is a great thing. It's a really high thing. No one can claim to be fallen forever. You can't say, I'm not worthy yet, I'm not worthy. You can't say that forever. Eventually, you do become worthy. However, we always have to have that conception in mind that, I'm still, like, I haven't done anything to make my bag appear, right? Yes, go on.
The big question I have with these things you're putting up there is really step 1, sub 1. What level of your identity is this desire coming from? Which seems very vague. and very complicated. I've worked a lifetime trying to understand this. What drives me? What drives me to? I'm a filmmaker. I want to make a film.
Very cool.
What's driving me to make this film? How, I don't know how to put it. Sometimes those drives are very confusing.
Yeah.
You know, where did it first manifest itself? You know, to be, you know, not only to make this film, to be successful, to be famous, all this pressure that goes into that choice. Where does it come from? Is it authentic? Is it what I really desire? What I really want? That's a complicated question.
It is a very complicated question. That is.
I'm still struggling.
I think you're not alone in that. I think most people struggle with that, largely for most of their lives, because it's a constant process of refinement. It's a constant process of understanding what level of your identity these things are coming up from. You know, because you know how like.
Where did it start?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think how when you're a kid, you ask your mom a bunch of questions, and you're just like, why do we do this? Why do we do that? Like, why do I have to go to school? Like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? And eventually your mom just gives up and just says because, right? And not that because is a sufficient answer in the case of this, you know, like what level of your identity, but there is a level of acceptance that we can come to where it says, yeah, I can't go any deeper than this. I can't go any deeper than the desire that, like, me personally, like, I love to share wisdom. I don't know where that comes from. I don't. But I know that that's like a deep-rooted core thing. And that's just what it is. For you, it might be like you just love telling stories. You love making films. And that might be like your because. And it goes as deep as that. And eventually we can go deeper if we like go through this constant process of refinement. But if we start from that level of acceptance that this is as far as I can go in my introspection now, and over time we can trust that eventually more will be revealed as I contemplate further on this. Again, the principle informs the practice, the practical, and the practical reveals the principle. And so going through this process again and again, the repetition will reveal more as we contemplate on these things. Hopefully that's helpful. Yes. And so, yeah, this is a really powerful framework. It will allow you basically to manifest anything in your life. So use it for good, please. Yes, because this is really, it is quite powerful, right? You can attract whatever it is that you want in your life. People use this exact same framework to achieve high levels of success and also sink into very depressing habits. You know, there's a story of our spiritual teacher, one of our spiritual teachers in this Bhakti tradition, Srila Prabhupada. His disciples asked him, like, how do I learn to love God? And his response was to ask, how does someone become a drunkard? And his disciples are quite confused because drinking is a no-no in the Bhakti tradition. And so he says, very simply he replies, he says, you learn to spend time with people who love to drink, yes? And the more you spend time, the more you manifest drink, to translate his words, the more you the more you attract drunkards into your life, the more likely you will also become a drunkard. And it also works in the opposite way. People who are rich oftentimes get that way because they've attracted very rich people, whether it's through their beauty, fame, knowledge, wealth, renunciation.
Manipulation.
That too, probably. But yes, absolutely. So people attract it because that's what you surround yourself with, right? This is what we attract, and this is what our inner orientation is. And so it is a very powerful framework. So I really will urge you to use it use it for good, rather. And what is the highest good? Because this is really what we're here to ask. This is the question that we're here to ask, is what is the highest good? There's a work in the Bhakti tradition called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is one of 18 Puranas. Puranas are Vedic literatures, and there are 18 of them. And each of those Puranas begins with a very specific question. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is distinct from all the other Puranas because it asks the question, what is the highest good? It doesn't ask, how can I remove suffering? How can I live a nice life? It asks, what is the highest good? Yes? And this question of what is the highest good? This is also evidenced by the fact that Krishna says that whatever is beautiful, whatever is attractive, whatever is glorious in this world has its existence as a mere spark of my splendor. This is Krishna, this is God talking. And so Krishna speaks here and says, yeah, everything that we see on a material level, we can understand that actually it's just a spark of the glory of God. Yes? And so this is a really beautiful statement, because if we understand that this is the glory of God, that everything we see is the glory of God, we can then begin to understand that actually becoming connected with divinity, becoming connected with Krishna, this is a way that we can attract more than the normal amount of beauty, attractiveness, and gloriousness into our lives. Does this make sense? Yes? Because if we understand that, there's what we see is only a fraction of what's possible, naturally, if we're intelligent, we're going to go after the whole thing, aren't we? And actually, this is also doubly indicated by the fact that in the Vedic scriptures, in this actual Srimad Bhagavatam, it is specifically called out that we all have desires. Every single one of us wants something. We want something out of this life. We want something out of all of our lifetimes. And in all of those lifetimes, the human form is really the most wonderful, because in this human form, we can practice Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is connection. Yoga is connection. It is a process of connection to divinity, to God, to Krishna, through the process of bhakti, which is loving devotional service. And this devotional service, this bhakti process, it is said, akama sarva kamova moksha kama udaridi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. This verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it describes how for three kinds of people, kama is desire. So for people who have no desire, yes, who are like free from desire. There are people who have desires for prosperity. Yes, they just want all sorts of those, 6 things like money, wealth, opulence, like fame, beauty, etc., etc. They have all the desires you can possibly think of. They have desires for liberation, for the removing of suffering. For all those 3 types of people, they should engage in this bhakti yoga process. Because if they engage in this process of bhakti yoga, they will have those desires fulfilled. Yes? And so this is the real promise of the bhakti tradition, is that actually we connect with Krishna. And because Krishna literally means all attractive. This is the name Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. So you can understand that if we begin with a conception of divinity as an all attractive being, and that everything that we see in this world, existence itself, rests upon that all-attractive being. And everything glorious that we see in this world also is an emanation. It's just a small spark of that attraction. We can understand the principle that if we align ourselves to this very attractive personality, if we align ourselves with this very attractive being, automatically all these attractive things that we want, all the things that we want to attract in our world, will by default manifest. It's like if you have a rich friend, if I'm friends with, I'm trying to think of like a decent human being that's rich. Imagine like a really rich person who's a decent human being. If I'm friends with them, yes, if I'm friends with let's say, yeah, Warren Buffett, let's say, someone who's not, Bill Gates or like Bezos or something, like Warren Buffett, right? Like I hang out at his house all the time. We're hanging out. We're just like we're close to each other. Eventually, he'll be like, yeah, like, how can I help? Like, is there anything you want? Like, can I help you out? Like, that's a natural thing. But we have to approach that relationship from a place of love. We can't be going into it from an ulterior motive, which is why the Bhakti process is pure loving devotional service. And so this is the process of Bhakti, because Krishna is all attractive. And so this is the way that we can understand the law of attraction in our lives, is that we engage in this process of Bhakti Yoga. We recognize that Krishna also is time, the force that brings these different things into our lives, and we do our due diligence in making sure that we're ready to receive the things when they come. Yes. I actually will stop here. Any questions? It feels like there's a lot of questions. Yes.
Yes, I got a question. There's some of the 6 points that you were listed at the beginning. Yes.
Those.
So there's some that could have like maybe a negative connotation, like this idea of we mentioned that many people want to be influencers, or
Yeah.
sometimes it might be like, oh, they want fame, maybe for the wrong reasons, like you were saying.
Sure.
Don't you think that maybe their intent as to why they're looking for fame, for example, would shift through the practice of bhakti? Like instead of maybe just calling for attention and validation through maybe process of bhakti would be maybe for the bettering I don't know, society or something. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
So.
would it fade away? The desire could fade away, something else could come.
Absolutely. So restating your point, let me know if I'm restating this well, is that we often enter into the process of bhakti with other desires, and when we have all those other desires, we engage in the process of bhakti. Will those desires like fall away if they're not pure in like their origin, or are those desires going to be used for the betterment of society? And there's a story from the Srimad Bhagavatam that I was thinking about as you were saying this, which is a story of this young prince, and his name is Dhruva. And kings back in the day had multiple wives, and so he was the son of the junior wife, of the wife that the king didn't like so much. We talked about being in relationships and not wanting to be in relationships at the beginning, right? But no, as I'm sure they were a loving couple. But he was the son of the junior wife. He was the son of the lesser favorite wife. And so there was one day, he's like a 5-year-old kid, 6-year-old kid, 6? I think he's 6. 5? 5. He's a 5-year-old kid, and he wants to like go to his dad. And so he goes to his dad, and the son of the favorite wife is there already, and the favorite wife is also with the king. And so the favorite wife says to our protagonist Dhruva, says, "What are you doing here? You can't play with your dad. Like you're the son of the least favorite, of the junior wife. Get out of here," And so, as a 5-year-old kid, that's like incredible trauma to be told like you can't hang out with your dad, So he's terribly affected by this, and so he decides, like on the advice of his mother and some other people, that some sadhus, like some saintly people that he meets, that he's going to go to the forest and engage in this like deep bhakti yoga, and he does like really deep like austerity, like he's like meditating like without like breathing like once a day kind of thing, living on like fruits and berries, and then like fasting for like weeks on end. Like he's doing this incredible like tapasya, this incredible austerity, to please the Lord, to please divinity. And he does this because he wants a kingdom that is bigger than his father's. That's his motivation. Yeah? That's his motivation for going through this whole process. And so as soon as he goes through this whole process, eventually, after some time, the Lord appears. The Lord appears to him, and he's like completely transformed by the experience of the all attractiveness of the Lord. Yes, because what we see here is just a fraction. It's just a fraction of what's possible. And so then he hears this, he sees all this, and he sees the Lord, and his statement is that the diamonds that he was looking for, what he thought were diamonds, he now realizes are just pieces of crushed glass. What is the value of a diamond compared to crushed glass? It's night and day, right? And so he actually is like, I came in wanting that really great thing. I came in wanting that, like, what I thought was amazing. But this process and like what I've experienced through it has actually turned out to show me, it showed me that actually that wasn't really what I wanted all along. As in, it's like, I don't want that anymore. I want this, what I found after this process of bhakti. And the interesting thing is that he does get that. He does get what he started with initially, but he gets it with this added understanding that when I practice bhakti yoga, because there's actually a higher reality than all of this. And so, yes, this is fine, it's good, but also it's not the goal. And that's the real point, is that this isn't the goal. We can want all these things, and that's totally fine, valuable, necessary for our growth, but it's necessary in a way that lets us understand that this isn't the goal. And that's what happens through this process of bhakti yoga. Was that helpful? Was that answer your question? Yes.
I think it relates to this. There's a saying, you could have what you want, but you just can't need it.
Exactly. That's actually a great way to phrase it. Yeah. We often get what we want, but we will often get it. We will often get what we want in a way that there's sand in the cake. That's the phrase I like to use.
It's selfish.
Yeah. We want it in a way that's selfish as opposed to
Rather
of service.
Than, this loving.
Devotional service, yes. Any other questions? We still got some time. Yes. Easy questions now, Champak.
I'm just thinking, so this is such a beautiful framework. Thank you so much. When, let's say we're talking about high spiritual goals,
Mm-hmm.
really good. Okay, I'm clear on what I want, but am I aligned to it at all times? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you mentioned is association, which is key. We know that hanging out with people who are aligned to the things that I want will help. What are some other challenges that you see that are in the way of us going through those steps?
I think oftentimes, because it's true, like, especially when our goals are really, really high. Because imagine your goal is to run a marathon, and like you're like me, and I haven't run in 6 years. Like I can't expect to run a marathon tomorrow, and that's also the idea that it is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and so it will take a lot of time, a lot of patience. It takes regular check-ins. Obviously, I would need to like start running, join a run club. That's association people to like make the process of running enjoyable, as opposed to like a brutal assault on my body because I haven't run in 8 years. So association is the first thing, but another thing that comes to mind is like setting smaller goals. Like we may have an ultimate goal of running a marathon, but I can also set the small goal of running down the block, run a 5K, run a 10K, So having smaller, manageable goals is a really great way. It says, like in the Bhakti process, our goal is Prem, Krishna Prem. That's such a high goal. Let's settle for like Nishta, or one particular Anartha. Let's deal with that. Let's deal with one particular unwanted habit. Let's deal with something small first. And so like focusing on like those small things, and just being like, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? And then also a lot of it is just recognizing that like we often have this alignment that comes is a result of understanding what the goal is. I think a lot of the times we don't actually understand what the goal is. We may be clear on what we want because we want it, and it's like, okay, cool. Like I want because something that's like my psychophysical aligned with my psychophysical framework, or maybe it's like what I theoretically understand as like the desire of the soul, or whatever else it may be. But we're not actually clear on what that goal is, and so oftentimes, I think especially in this Bhakti process, people don't read enough about what is the goal, like why do we do what we do, you know? Often, especially when we join, we like show up in spiritual processes, like we do kirtan, whatever it is. It's like, okay, why are we doing this? Because like the beats are sick. Is that why we're here? It's like yes and no, right? So what is the point? What is the point? And so like really, because the phrase that comes to mind is Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Like the Krishna says this in the Gita, that this single pointedness, the fixedness, the firm fixation on the goal, this one pointedness is what's required to achieve it. And so hearing about the goal, yes.
Is there an end to want? Is there an end to want?
Oftentimes, no. Yeah, there isn't. Our desires are unlimited, which is why our desires can only be fulfilled by the unlimited. Yeah.
Desires are still what? So is there an end?
No, there isn't, because our desires are unlimited. Like we will continue to want things continuously, and so only in the unlimited will our unlimited desires be fulfilled. Yes, I think that's the last question that we have time for. 6:42. Yeah.
Will there always be 100% alignment for the magnet and the attraction to work? Or could you have at least 5% of leap of faith for the uncertainty?
Can you restate that? Can you just restate that real quick?
Does there have to be 100% alignment for the magnet of attraction to work? Or could there be at least 5% of leap of faith of uncertainty and patience?
Yeah. So I mean, even just using the example of the magnet, it's not that every single atom in the magnet is 100% pointing in the same direction. Yeah. If 50% are pointing, it's actually good enough. If you've ever done, going back to my 6th grade science experiments, if you ever like rubbed a needle on a magnet, and then the needle itself is also magnetized, like you put it on water, it like turns the little compass thing. I remember doing that in 6th grade. That magnet was just, it's not turned into a magnet by itself. It's that a small percentage of the atoms are now like aligned or something, I guess, right? And so it's a small percentage that still works, but it's what you base your attraction on, is that percentage, right? I am a divided human being, as are all of us, right? I have high aspirations and I have less than high aspirations. And so it is the quality of my aspiration that I use that I will naturally attract into my life. Does this make sense? It's what we choose to highlight as I want this to grow, and when we start pointing everything else in that direction, then naturally not everything will acquiesce to pointing in that direction immediately. But if we start there, then something will happen. Yeah. One thing that comes to mind as a more secular example is if you ever read the book Atomic Habits, the author talks about how identity shift is a real key to making habits stick. And so starting with that part of we have multiple different identities, right? I'm a football fan, I like to listen to jazz, or, I'm a painter. But if I pick the fact that I'm a painter, and make that the identity that I'm really want to gear all my decisions around, eventually the football and the jazz will drop off and I'm just only focused on painting. Yes? So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. And with that, I think we're at time. So thank you all very much. I also will say, like, actually it is more important for an audience to be here than the speaker, because if you guys weren't here, I'm just a guy talking to an empty room. If I wasn't here, one of you guys could have given this talk. So thank you all very much for coming. It's also very, very grateful.